All right, welcome back to another episode of Culinary Connections Distribution Dialogues, where we talk shop on all things food service, branding, marketing, and sales. Uh, Recently, we've had a slew of distributors on the show, and today we have a hybrid restaurateur and brand builder in the food service and retail side of it. Jessie Koenig joining us from the Washington, D.C. area. Thanks for joining us. And you're living in real time the the realities, challenges, stubbing your toe, all of the things, the roller coaster of emotions that go with. Well, hell, you have a restaurant, so that has another uh, slew of issues and opportunities that come with it. But Jesse, thanks for jumping on the show with us. Um, I've been reading about podcasts, and back in 2019, having a podcast was on my vision board. I gave every excuse on why I couldn't do it. I was too busy. I didn't know how, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward to this year, I was talking to somebody and they told me just to start ugly. And, there's been a lot of podcast gurus that say, don't talk about your background. And when you start out, don't be like everybody else. But um, I think the purpose of this podcast is to learn about people's journeys and how you got to where you are. And, you know, for me, it's about sharing the stories of people. And with that said, I'm going to do what the podcast gurus say not to do is why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got to the seat that you're in?
Yeah, I can give a bit of a background. And to your point, we definitely have kept ourselves busy and have seen a lot of different parts of the food industry. The way we got into this was a little bit unique in that it was never part of the master plan. It wasn't on our vision board when we were getting into thinking about careers and we wanted to do longer term. My business partner, Ben, and I, we actually met in college. We were friends. Both were similarly kind of on the business school track of thinking we'd go into consulting or accounting or finance. I'm from New Jersey. Kind of always thought I'd be back on, Wall Street or in New York or something like that. And as we got into, actually getting to that point in our lives where you're trying to find internships and figure out what your job's going to be, we had friends that had gone down that track, weren't having the best time working a 9 to 5 desk jobs, sometimes 9 to 9 desk jobs. So we sort of just procrastinated going into a more corporate white collar career by starting this food business on our campus. We were in a small school, Wake Forest University down in North Carolina. We had sort of just pick food because that was a problem that people always talked about on our campus. There wasn't a lot of food options. I'd worked in some restaurants in high school. Ben loves to cook, loves to eat, but we weren't restaurateurs or had some big vision. It was just sort of solving a problem, doing something we could do. And as we got into building a brand and serving food, we got kind of hooked on this whole path and started learning a lot about the fast casual industry. This was 2013, 2014, and food trucks were really big things. We started learning about that. Lo and behold, we built a small brand, learned a lot about the food industry from a very academic perspective, got our hands dirty a little bit, and we ended up launching a food truck right after we graduated. And just what we did is moved up to the DC area, launched Swizzler Gourmet Hot Dogs. It was like a hot dog food truck. And as we learned about sourcing and met chefs and did all the things, we started realizing that the meat industry and just kind of the supply chain around food is pretty broken. We started sourcing our own grass-fed, grass-finished beef hot dogs out of the Midwest by the pallet, and we had no business doing that, so we didn't really even have a business at that point. But spent 3 years building a food truck brand, won some awards like Best New Food Truck and stuff like that, had fun with it. And then about 3 years into, learning a lot about the food industry from just building this food truck and farmers market kind of mobile catering brand, we realized that if we wanted to stick long-term in the food industry, we had to do something we were excited about. As anybody listening to this who's probably in the food world one way or another, there's much easier ways to make a living, but it's a lot of really passionate, amazing people, and we decided to stick with it long term. We pivoted our restaurant and food truck concept into more of this fast food world, which we thought was very similar, kind of nostalgic and mystery meat. Not a lot of brands doing it the right way, but people still had this kind of like, thought that it should be this memory and this delicious thing from their childhood. So started going more into this fast food world, trying to make really high quality fast food at an affordable price point. Learned about regenerative grass-fed beef and the regenerative agriculture movement, started supporting that and buying beef from awesome farms, buying buns from local bakeries still, making a lot of our ingredients ourselves. today we have one brick and mortar restaurant in DC, right next to Nationals Ballpark in Southeast DC. It's been going really great. We opened it during the pandemic, so just being alive is a big accomplishment since we'd signed our lease in 2019. But it's been going really well now. Sort of like a local DC culty place with really great smash burgers, fried chicken sandwiches, our own fries, of course. And then we're also in some stadiums. So we've got stadium locations at FedEx Field, Nats Ballpark, Capital One Arena. So it's been fun to learn a lot about these different venues and how it all works. And during all of this craziness, we also decided to not just stick with the restaurant side of it, but we also, during COVID, we're trying to solve our own problem with sourcing and supply chain and just streamlining things we could to stay alive. And we always had these really awesome hand cut fries we'd done since our first food truck. We realized that doing that across town at 3 different locations was going to be tough as we were trying to figure out, the COVID world of running restaurants and food trucks. So we made our own frozen fries for ourselves. And the whole point was it has to be as good or better than our house cut fries that are made fresh in store. And it's got to be something we can just make in one place and use all over the city. And we figured it out for ourselves when we did. We had these really awesome house cut fries. And as far as any guests knew, like we were making them there. But for us, we just got to open a bag and pop them in the fryer. And we were making across town our little French fry factory that used to be a food truck kitchen. So we had these awesome frozen fries, and it prompted us to kind of dig in and learn more about the industry, which we learned is kind of like owned by a monopoly. We call it Big Potato. Not baked potato, but Big Potato sort of runs things. And we decided we think we can sort of come in here and shake things up and do a better job. So we've launched Jessie and Ben's, which is the shirt here, but Jessie and Ben's is a frozen French fry brand focused on just, doing fries the right way and doing a better job at that. We're launching into grocery this month, actually, which is really exciting. So we're doing avocado oil or grass-fed beef tallow fries. So higher quality, better for you fries. You can make it home in the oven or air fryer. And probably more pertinent to this conversation is we're also launching our fries into lots of restaurants. So we're getting set up with some big distributors, and we're going to be selling our house cut frozen fries to restaurants. So if you're doing a house cut fry right now in your back of house and you don't like paying $22 an hour with, labor and taxes and all the things for someone to cut potatoes, we can make a fry that's our idea is as exactly as good. Maybe it's 99% as good because every chef has their own little secret sauce, but pretty much as good as you're going to make it in your own back of house. No headaches, no hassle. You're just opening a bag and you've got a great house cut style fry. So that's what we're working on right now. We're really excited to just let restaurants do what they do best. And, punching potatoes in the back of house is probably not the thing that makes them get out of bed in the morning. It's making an amazing menu. It's serving their guests their awesome food. So we're trying to, help guests enjoy delicious fries wherever they go and help restaurants make more money and not have as many headaches because we've been there, so we know it's tough.
You live in a very intriguing space in the industry. One, as an end user, and two, building a brand, and three, trying to get your product into distribution. Right? Most people live in one of the spaces, and I think you learn the way that you communicate to your customer in a restaurant is far different than the way you have to communicate to a potential retailer or restaurateur that wants to buy the product. And you also have to sell into distribution, right? And most people, having been on the distribution side, particularly around the specialty space, most specialty distributors don't really we don't sell French fries. That's not what we do, right? That's not what defines us. It doesn't really fit our portfolio, right? But the reality is, so many hip, cool places, it does literally coast to coast, are wanting to work with smaller distributors because of the flexibility. It could be lower cutoff, or lower minimums, better cutoff times. It could be the diversity of product, the regionality, right? Going into a big box, there's a lot more that comes to it. You can gain a lot out of those as well, but typically the Big Potato owns the opportunity to enter that distribution channel. And what are some of the things that you've realized trying to sell into distribution as you build your brand, which I also think is a unique position, because you talk about as we build our brand, not as we build our business, but really build our brand. And I have another DC, fellow brand, Call My Mother, or Call Your Mother. I forget which
Call your
one.
mother,
I had
yeah.
coffee there this morning, but you know, the total experience when you walk in, the vibe is different. The attention to the decor, what people are wearing, the swag that's out there, right? Like literally everything is important, just like it is at Swizzler. And I really think that, and I have the chance to talk to a lot of people building businesses within food service that neglect building brand. That's a lot to digest, but talk a little bit about what you found and that thought behind building brand.
Yeah, and just quick aside, Call Your Mother's awesome. Big fans of Danny and Andrew. We actually, funny story, not to take us off track, but our first food truck we launched was in the same kitchen as like their first pizza concept they did before doing Call Your Mother's. We know them well and are big fans, and it's been cool to see them go from DC out to Denver. But yeah, building a brand, that's a great example for them. I think for us, we've just learned a lot of this stuff just by doing it and taking the time. And we certainly could be further along, probably, depending on how you look at things and how you measure success. But further along in terms of more units or more scale, had we had a little bit more experience. But the benefit is that while we may not be as big as some other folks, over the course of 8 or 9 or 10 years, we've gotten to really see all these different things and play around and learn things from the ground up. And I think running a food truck is such a good testing ground to build brand, to see what's working, to actually interact face to face with so many customers. And we've done this iteration a couple of times of kind of transforming the identity from our food truck concept into more of a fast food burger concept, and then trying to re-identify ourselves as we were, pivoting into, not only fast food, but getting into fried chicken sandwiches and really thinking about what the brand is today. And we also actually launched a frozen fry brand as a test during COVID, which is sort of a precursor to Jessie and Ben's. So we had this whole like boot camp of doing that as well. And I think for us, we love having the experience of restaurants and retail, and then also having more of this consumer packaged goods part of it, because we think, to your point, there's so much overlap and so much you can learn from these different disciplines. And it's not just this like kind of like soulless thing that lives on a shelf that isn't having personality behind it. We really believe that the big opportunity in some of these huge categories like fast food, like frozen potatoes, is that they're run by these giant corporations that are so different than when they first started out. McDonald's today is a lot different from Ray Kroc and the McDonald's brothers in the 50s or 60s. Lamb Weston, which makes a huge part of the fry portfolio, is very different today, or Simplot, than when J.R. Simplot was running the show and his family was doing it for decades and generations. So we're trying to just like bring personality and bring a soul to something that could otherwise be seen as a boring category. And I think that's where the big opportunity is. And to your point of what you learn when you're talking to distributors and getting into these conversations, is that people love a good story. People love to root for the underdog. They love to root for high quality, better products, specialty things. And I think we have this benefit that we've actually been pitched by salespeople from distributors. We've been pitched by brands that are trying to like get on our menu at our restaurant. So by having those experience and seeing what was like a really awesome thing I took away from that, where someone was really genuine, they were trying to solve a problem for us, they were coming in with this like really awesome curiosity, versus the salesperson who comes in the door and you could tell they're just like talking their book and they're kind of just like going through the motions and reading their script. So I think we're trying to take all of that learning, all the stuff, all the good and the bad that we've learned over the years. And we've worked with, to your point, the big box, we've worked with the specialty produce guys, we've worked with the specialty broadliners. And it's not been because we wanted to cycle through all of these. It's just that we would take, a call, we'd take a meeting, we'd try something out. And we found for ourselves, like, working with a little bit more of a regional or a more specialty distributor is a great experience for us for a lot of those things you mentioned. It's having that higher level of service. And of course, that comes down to who your actual individual rep is sometimes too. It could be their tech platform. It could be the types of brands that they carry. It's how flexible they are with helping you bring in products that meet what your customers want, because you know that best and probably better than what the distributors do when they're picking out all their merchandising. So yeah, it's been a really big learning curve, but we feel like having this multidisciplinary perspective of having been in the restaurants, having been the manager ordering from distributors, now selling into distributors, talking to other restaurateurs who are out there trying to, maintain their margins and make money and make their guests happy and navigate all the stuff that's going on. We just try to come in right now as a food service partner and say, hey, if this isn't a good fit for you, we don't want to force this down your throat, but we know this solved the problem for us. So we're trying to find other accounts where we know we're actually solving a problem for them. We're actually helping them serve better tasting food, make more money, make more margin, have less headaches, all the things that we know that we are solving for ourselves. We just know that there's probably 100 or 1,000 other restaurants out there that have the same problem. And we're trying to get the word out and see how we can be of service and, of course, build a great business around that.
Man, so much to unpack on that. Great answer to the question. And when you think about when you're scaling, regardless of restaurant or distribution or whatever it is that you're doing, there's only one Jessie and one Ben, and replicating that passion for the customer experience. To your point, a salesperson that walks in and maybe leads with a price list, or what's the differentiating factor is, the genuine passion and belief that they carry for the products and services that they stand behind, right? And when you walk into Swizzler, I think I've not been yet, but I can imagine people that are fun and excited, and they kind of there's a similarity into the vibe, right? And I think as anyone tries to grow, the last thing you want to do is really be dependent on one individual, right? Like they shouldn't make or break your organization. They should be a part of the organization, and that's an okay thing. As a salesperson, I want people to do business with the name on the jersey, not necessarily just me as an individual, because me as an individual, I don't work 24/7, right? Like the driver for the distribution company has to be friendly and polite and be able to, be a resource. And then when you call customer service or you're talking to accounting, that's all part of the complete package. And I think that goes the same way as you build your brand in food service is, whether you're talking to the marketing people or it's the head of sales or whoever. The reality is not every time am I going to get Jessie or Ben when I go into the organization, either as the fry company or as the burger. And I think the same goes for distribution. As you evolve yourself either as an individual salesperson, if you're a senior manager, nurturing your people to become one, preach that, hey, I cannot be the only person for you in my organization. I have to trust the system. So if you call customer service, my team is going to take care of you, right? Because I have a baseball game with the kids that you're going to call me at 7. I'm not going to be able to pick up. And what's that lifespan? So I think very important for anyone building to know that, and I'm learning that myself as I grow my business, is I can't be in every meeting. I can't be a part of every conversation. I can't do, right? So how do I pass the knowledge along to others to be, okay with dealing with somebody outside of just myself? And, it's an experience, but it's also surrounding yourself with people that believe, and as in distribution is the responsibility to curate a really good mix of product that a particular subset of customer believes in, and being able to go and preach that. And when I was, it wasn't even a pitch to talk to you guys initially, just as like, hey, y'all should connect, right? We had mutual friends in Eric Martino, and got a chance to learn about your business. It was like, oh, a fry company. And in my head, I have this preconceived notion of what a fry company can be. And you touched on it just a second ago, being, in some sense, a lot of brands within distribution are soulless. It's a product. Okay. What separates you, right? And the holistic experience starts with, there's a corrugated box, right? There is, what's your website look like? What is that, the feeling that you associate yourself, the brightness of color when you go to the website? And for brands looking to pitch distributors, there's a brand that reached out to me today, and I looked, and it's like, oh, great. It's just another frozen seafood company, and you could look at yourself as just another frozen potato company, but the vibe is totally different as soon as you experience any of the branding. And I think that's a critical piece, because sometimes the only way you're getting through, it could be a forward from a salesperson. Hey, I saw this product in our, in a prominent kitchen. This looks pretty cool. Procurement professional or sales manager. I think we should carry it. If it's boring, you're likely not going to get even past it doesn't matter how cool the product is. It's just what's that perception, and I think it's completely undervalued the investment in brand, because it does cost money to have brand assets created, but in today's world it's super critical. Going into it, was that like a huge piece for you guys? Like, you knew that you wanted to have like top branding, and I make a silly comparison because Five Guys has been very successful in their own right in the way that they go to market and have been around. But you look at the Five Guys experience today and you compare it to a Shake Shack, a U, or anybody else that kind of has that more hip modern spin on things. What was the reasoning, or was it just inside of you?
Yeah, I think to circle back on something you brought up a few minutes ago too, like definitely agree with you that building a team and a culture is so important because it can never rely on just one person's kind of shoulders. But that being said, we did kind of like hack it a little bit in that we genuinely like made the brand Jessie and Ben's, which is, my business partner Ben and I. And we wanted to have our names be on the front of the jersey. We wanted to be building a brand around people, and that we are going to be the curators. We're going to be the people that are going the extra mile. We're learning about this stuff. We're shaking the hands of the farmers. We're shaking the hands of the producers. We're going to be a curator and put together an amazing product that is something we're proud to sell at our restaurants. And we want to be able to have other restaurateurs be able to trust the Jessie and Ben's brand, what it stands for, the guys behind the fries. We're the people that are going to go out and figure this stuff out. And you can actually reach us. So I agree to your point. You can't be in every meeting, of course, but we also were very thoughtful around looking at the category. And this is maybe answering your question more directly. I think one of the big things that brands sometimes do wrong, but good branding agencies and creatives are always doing this, is that you have to start by looking at the competitive set and see sometimes something that would otherwise be not that innovative is something really unique in your specific category. So for fries, for example, you look at the grocery store is probably the easiest way to think about it. You walk down the grocery store aisle, you look at the different options that are in there, and they all kind of look the same right now. And there's one brand, Alexia, it's like the white bags that are in there. They launched in the early 2000s. At the time when they came onto the shelf, they looked super different than everyone else. It was Orida, it was the big kind of like red and yellow bags. There's the tractor and the potato on there. It's the whole kind of like thing that's going on in the 90s for branding. Alexia sort of zigged and went the other way and said, hey, we're a white brand. We have this different look. And of course, over 15 years, it gets a little dated and it becomes kind of blending into everything else in there. So when we were looking at the set, we're thinking, okay, you look at every other part of the grocery store and you see certain attributes that are popping up. And there's things like avocado oil, which we really believe in the grocery setting of being, higher quality fat and benefits of not being a seed oil and health things, all the other stuff that's going on. But we've seen it work other places. You look at the potato chip aisle, there's brands that are growing there. But from a branding perspective, not just an attribute perspective, you look at all these brands that are in there, there's nothing that has like people behind it. You go to ice cream, there's Jenny's ice cream, there's Van Leeuwen's, there's these like brands that have people and like more like a real feeling to it. Stacy's pita chips, Justin's nut butters. So again, we're not like inventing something completely new, but we're taking something that's sort of a proven playbook and applying it into a category or into a set that makes us very unique and different. So I think in the food service world, it's exactly the same. It's like we want to stand out because if I have a problem, I start buying Lamb Weston 3/8 skin on stealth fries for my restaurant, and I get sold them by a distributor. Sales rep comes in, convinces me to buy them. Maybe they give me a rebate. If I have a problem with that product, I am like this tiny little ant in this field of like, sales and how big of an organization this is. If I have a problem, maybe I can call a sales rep for the distributor. Maybe I can get in touch with someone at Lamb Weston. But like, if you have a problem with Jessie and Ben's fries, like we're putting a QR code in our case boxes that you can submit a form, and like Ben and I are going to read that, and we're going to talk to our production team. We're going to figure that out. If someone wants to do something custom sourcing, custom cut, like you can get in touch with me and Ben and our team, and we're going to work with you on it. And what's nice is we have the flexibility. We don't need to be a multi-billion-dollar company. We don't need to be public, and we don't need to have quarterly earnings reports. Like we want to work with awesome brands, awesome chefs, people that like we're proud to service and I'm excited to build a brand around. And we have the flexibility and the ability to say no if someone's trying to beat us up on price or is like a real big pain in the ass. Pardon my French. Like, we don't have to work with them, and that's what I think is fun about building a brand and putting that brand first and having a personality. It's not just how do we drive the most sales possible to achieve our goals. For us, it's like, what's going to make us unique and stand out. And for us, we think about that as like, we're the guys behind the fries. We care about quality. We're making the real Belgian style twice fried fry, house cut style fry that any chef would be proud to be making in their back of house. They're just choosing to outsource their back of house with us because they trust us, and it gives them more time, more energy, more space to do what they really do well in their own kitchens. So that's the brand that we want to build, and that's how we want to think and have our customers feel about us. And at the end of the day, I kind of think that's what like brands are all about. It's how do you feel about them? Like when they leave the room, how does someone describe them to their friend? If Ian's at a trade show and someone's talking about fries, he can like in a couple sentences explain what makes Jessie and Ben's better or unique, or can explain that conversation we had and how he felt, speaking to us versus talking to the guy at Lamb Weston or Simplot. That's what a brand is. And I think some people just try to sugarcoat it with like the cool colors or the cool fonts. They outsource all of it to another branding agency. For us, we wanted to build something that felt really authentic and we're proud about, that has a point of view, that has a personality, and can really stand behind our products and be proud to say, this is what we do. There are things that we don't do, but this is how we're going to stand out and be different.
That's what I've really loved about the specialty food distribution space. There's been a whole lot of consolidation over the past 5, 10 years in all of food service distribution. And, I think where we're heading is a world of big broadliner and then, a specialty distributor. I I see it being very, very difficult to be a singular distribution company. And that means just a produce company, just a seafood company, just a meat company. You don't even see, you very rarely see just a dairy company, right? And you go back 20 years and it was four produce companies in town and four meat cutters and four seafood and four, milk company. Now it really is kind of, it's big versus small, and more nimble. Um, we are getting to a point where there's a lot of people in distribution that are the owners of a 10 million, 15, 20, $50 million distribution company that are in their mid 60s, older than that. Um, the kids want nothing to do with the business, right? And so it's going to be left for someone to acquire, and there's a handful of people left to acquire those. And what I've enjoyed about the category is the ability to connect chefs to people like you, because if I'm making a sales call and working with the chef, I have the ability to say, hey, look, Jessie and Ben, when they come to Denver, they're going to come eat in your restaurant, right? Like they're going to come and have a connection point with you, right? Nothing against Lamb Weston, which is a huge company and does, a lot for a lot of people here in the States, but like Mr. Lamb Weston is not going to come and eat at your restaurant, right? Like, and now we have a lot of it. I mean, hell, you live in it on the restaurant side. Relevancy to get people in the door is driven by this thing, like if you have a really cool Instagram reel around, whatever the chicken special is, right? Or, for a Saturday brunch at a XYZ restaurant, right? Decisions are being made off of what it feels like and what your, what was created digitally, and having the ability to say, hey, look, if you want something to help promote the connection, I can get Jessie to say, hey, look, we're so excited about serving, our fries in XYZ restaurant. I can provide that to a restaurateur that adds value to sharing the story. You have a choice in what you put on the menu. The fact that you're choosing to put Joyce Farms on the menu, right? And I didn't realize that you were Wake Forest connected, which is also Winston Salem, just
Yep.
around there is where Joyce is. For anyone that doesn't know Joyce Farms is a regenerative beef, chicken, pork, they have rabbit, they have a few other things, but they're doing completely the opposite of what most people in the land breathing protein category do. Yes, it's more expensive, but it hits the attributions that are important to a subset of people. And 2 weeks ago in New York, I ran into Ron Joyce and Stuart, and was able to say hello to them, right, and connect. And you don't get those opportunities with these large food companies. And you know again, when it comes to making the connections and standing out, the reality is yeah, there's a lot of me too's out there, and it has to be that. I mean, it just is, right? Like when you think about the big boxes out there. But for you as a distributor to stand out, you have to have products like Jessie and Ben's to continue to evolve and innovate. Now the challenge, I know you're seeing it firsthand. You have freight that comes into play when going to pitch a distributor. You're in the frozen category. Most people in distribution, I mean, if you were to start from scratch and build your perfect distribution center, the moment you build it, the moment is, as soon as it's built and done, you're like, damn it, I should have built it bigger, right? And I
Yeah.
equate the freezer as that one closet that has all the shit in it in your house that you could, like, you just shovel it in and you try to close the door. That is what most distributors, freezers are like. So you may have a great product, but the reality is they're having to pick up from far away, or we really don't have any room. How are you overcoming that or meeting that objection point when talking to a distributor?
Yeah, I'll answer that directly. I want to just put a pin in for myself. I want to go back and mention that kind of like the video, social media part of brand, because I think that's really interesting and a great insight that you're kind of getting at with restaurants in Denver example. But talking about distributors, we've definitely had that experience of starting to meet more of these distributors, talk to them. And I think the big thing we're starting to learn and have learned over the years, but gets reinforced now, is that every business you work with, you're working with people. And, different brands are going to be, different distributors are all going to have different pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses, different facilities, all of that. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to relationships with real people at the end of the day. As you've probably seen over the years, and you're a great sales rep and salesman in your, previous life before getting into what you're doing, that can make or break the experience. And the same thing goes for the internal operations people, the merchandisers, the category managers. If you can build that relationship and get them to understand your passion and why you are unique and why you're different, you can level with them and have a real conversation and understand, not just like us beating them over the head saying we need this product in there, we need to get this slot, we need to get these SKUs in the door. But sometimes, to your point, like, it's not in their control. Maybe their manager is managing the category, and their promotion or their bonus or their job is based on them hitting a certain percentage margin. And you're trying to, instead of being across the table arguing, you want to start sitting on the same side of the table with them and looking objectively and say, okay, now I understand where your incentives are. Now I understand this problem. Let's work together on a solution. Let's get creative here. Or maybe we can craft a pitch to your boss or your supervisor or the person who's, measuring your performance, and explain to them that, hey, we're not banking percentages at the end of the day. We're banking dollars. And maybe if you make a 13% margin on Jessie and Ben's, you're actually making more money than your 18% margin on the more commodity conventional product. So it can be so many different tactics. I think it's so specific to each category, but absolutely we've found that frozen is an interesting beast because of the constraints around freight, the constraints around trucking, how much freezer space you've got. It definitely creates some extra hurdles and challenges. But I think if you can build that demand with the restaurant, the end user, the company that wants to bring you in, they have a lot of power and they can use their leverage to pull you into distribution. And then you just have to make yourself easy to work with. You've got to be understanding. You've got to be flexible. And that's what we're working on right now. Is we've got timelines, we've got goals and stuff that we'd love to hit. And of course, they're probably very optimistic and aggressive when somebody's like, we're not a big priority to a big distributor right now necessarily. But if we can come in with some empathy and flexibility and understand where they're coming from and try to make it a win-win-win across the board, a win for us, a win for the distributor, a win for the brand at the end of the day who's serving our product, that's going to be a great scenario and going to have that staying power. And, we're in this for the long haul. It's not some quick thing. So we want to make sure we're really protecting those relationships and being a good partner, not just to the restaurants and the end users and to the customers, but also to the distribution, because really we're all part of the same team here. We're trying to get a really awesome product into the hands of chefs to then serve it to guests so they can make money and guests feel like they got great value. So it's all on the same page. Um, Going back to the social media thing quickly, if that's cool with you. I think that's such a great point about the differentiation of like a specialty brand. I know we actually ran into each other in New York a couple weeks back and met Shannon from Tenderbelly, and similar experience, right? It's like you meet the person behind the brand, you're like, wow, they're great. I'd love to try this product and see if there's a way to make it work. It's such a different experience, and I think kind of like the master plan, the thing that I've been really thinking a lot about as we're building more of this branded approach to a somewhat boring category. It's like, how do we build a platform that can empower and like create more value for restaurants? So we do fun segments of Instagram reel, to your point, of like a cool new burger place or a cool deli in the DC area. It has nothing to do with Swizzler. It's not driving people to go buy stuff from our restaurant. But if we can just promote them, and like if people can come to know Jessie has been in the food industry for 10 years and thinks about this stuff all day, and if he says this burger place is good, it's probably worth checking out. And then I can leverage that, quote unquote influence, or leverage that platform to help drive a couple extra guests into a really great restaurant down the street. They're going to be appreciative to it, of course. And, if there's a win-win that we're also solving a problem for them and giving them a great fry product, it's just trying to layer that different stuff on there. And I think we want to focus on building this brand not only as a fun thing that you can walk by in the grocery store and see in a catalog and decide to give it a try, but also a brand that's focused on educating people about why we think our product is better, why it's better for people's health, it's better for the planet, it's better because it tastes better, it's better because it saves you time and energy in the kitchen, or also just entertaining people and creating value that way. And I think if we can build up a platform and a brand, there's then so many things that we can do with it that can add value to our partners. And when we think of our partners, it's the chefs, it's the restaurant people that are doing the hard work every day. And we want them to be successful. We want them to make more money. It's a great win-win. If they get more people coming in the door, excited to try our fries with their burger, their chicken sandwich, or their steak, or whatever they're serving on their menu, if they're successful, we're successful. If they're buying more fries, we're selling more fries. So I think it's trying to just think outside the box. And it's not just, let me make the sale and then walk away and go move on to the next one. It's really trying to think through each of these touch points as a partnership and a part of our brand story and a part of what we're doing, and just trying to be creative and leverage the contacts and the network and the connections and the platform that we've built over the years as a way to make this a win for everybody across the board.
Again, so much to like riff off of that, and thinking through both on the brand side, on the distribution side, as an individual, as a chef, knowing the way that we communicate today is via camera, audio, and I've lived in a time period, right? I remember getting the AOL CDs, discs delivered to the house. I remember the yellow pages this big. I remember getting excited as a kid and getting Sports Illustrated every week because it was some new thing, right? And I remember playing video games and having a three-way call that lasted for forever, right? Like a cord on the phone, and a giant tube TV and a CD player. And all of those things have now gravitated into one singular device. And I heard a quote this morning: if your business does not understand contemporary communication, you are vulnerable. And one of my dear friends in Nashville, I caught up with, he's been in media his whole career. He's like, yeah, I'm working on buying Sports Illustrated right now. It's like, what? How are you about to buy Sports Illustrated, right? But Sports Illustrated is, honestly, like, what is Sports Illustrated today, right? Go walk by the newsstand, right? I remember when the Sunday newspaper used to be this thick, and now it's like, I haven't buy a newspaper. Are you kidding me? Like, what are you doing? The connection that you can create as a brand, as an individual, as a chef, far exceeds like selling the cup of coffee, right? It's who are the people, telling the story, uplifting the neighborhood that, hey, look, our neighbors, there's a great coffee shop or law firm or whatever it is, right? Like, you want people to know who you are and who your brand identity is. And I don't think enough brands or distributors for that matter take it seriously, right? Now you have a way to have a TV channel, a radio, and a magazine, and that the entry point is free. It's content creation. And so if you're not developing the content and leveraging partners like you to help storytell and bridge that gap and create connection, educate about the differences in whatever the product is, you're missing out, because it is, you know, every day that passes, the generations are getting younger that make decisions and spend dollars. And that is where attention is. And, just like I said, on the distribution side of, we're at this interesting point of where decision makers are who did used to carry and still may carry a newspaper under their arm and have a briefcase and, a mentality of like, I don't have to adapt to this because I'm going to retire soon. But the next generation, there's no excuses, right? Like you are going to, we live in a digital first world. I had a friend in Scottsdale that took Waymo or Wemo, whatever it is, self-driving car as the Uber. It's like, no, we live in that world today. There are self-driving Ubers, and we live in the AI world. So, not enough brands take that seriously. So, anyone out there listening, it is 100%, actually I heard personal branding is now personal reputation, and so
it's credibility,
let that
for
sink
sure,
into you as an individual, right? Take away whoever you work for. Like, how are you creating awareness for yourself and realizing that you do have the tool? I bought a Sony camera because I wanted like a nice SLR to try to like create content. And I realized like, shit, I'm not very good at this. Like you have to have like know how to do the shutter. And like, I don't know. And if you've listened to me a couple of times, you've heard I like Gary V. And, he mentions all the time the ROI of a basketball to him is zero, but to LeBron James, the same basketball is $1 billion.
Yeah.
And same goes for a camera. There's a lot of really talented photographers, videographers that with that same exact camera would produce content unbelievable. But with me, I'm like clumsy and have no freaking clue.
I think the challenge too with culinary in general is, and sorry to cut you off there, is that we've both, I think, seen, I'm sure plenty of people listening to this too. It's like when you're in the food business, whatever part you're in, everything is always like a matter of life and death, right? It's like there's always a fire, sometimes literally a fire to put out. And when that is happening, when operations are going crazy, whether it's like there's a big problem, there's a staffing issue, there's someone quits, a manager, you're trying to backfill it, it's really busy, and it's one of those good problems to have. All of these things take all of your attention and energy. And what we've found in our experience of building multiple companies in the food space at this point, it's the two things that go out the door are reporting and marketing. So I think like accounting, like it's a superpower when you can have your reports really quickly. I think we found, at least as a small business, it doesn't have a full-time controller or bookkeeper. Like when things get hectic, that's the thing that lags, a few weeks or a month. It's more reporting the news than actually giving you information. The other side of that is the marketing. I think it's really easy when you get busy, you just put your head down and you forget to do the blocking and tackling of just documenting and telling your story. And I think, to your point, it's just kind of a reframe and a retraining and making it normalized to not be afraid to share this stuff all the time and not have it feel like it has to be perfect. Because it's better just to be putting something out there than putting out nothing. And I think all of us find time to consume content one way or another. Sometimes it might be on the toilet, but like we're all scrolling on our phone doing stuff these days all the time. And it's how do you like reframe that time to be like, I don't want to be a content consumer. I want to be a content producer and I want to be sharing this stuff. And again, easier said than done. But I just want to point out, I feel like our industry in particular, it's a huge problem because it's just something that like doesn't get put high in the priority list, even though it can be such a game changer. But it also makes it a huge opportunity that the people that do embrace this mentality of saying, I want to build a platform, I want to build a personal brand, I want to get the word out. And it doesn't have to be, I'm the professional chef and you don't know anything and I'm telling you my secrets. It can also just be pulling people and bring them along for the ride. I think that we've had a lot of fun recently as we're getting Jessie and Ben's up and running and we want to do more of this, is just like kind of opening the kimono and saying, hey, like, we don't know what we're doing. We're about to launch in Whole Foods this month. Come and see like us figure out how we're going to make this successful. And I think people just like want to root for the underdog. They want to see this stuff and learn about it because it's sort of that like oh, I had this dream to start a business. I had a dream to start this brand. I had this great idea, but I never followed through on it, at least not yet. I think it's fun for people to just be like on their kind of like, couple hours between dinner and bedtime to be scrolling around on their phone and actually be able to like come along for the ride and see that journey. So, yeah, I just think it's such a huge opportunity for folks in the food space. We have the privilege of sometimes having a very crazy, hectic job, of course, but like there's so much fun, amazing stuff that we get to be a part of and see. It could be touring a distribution facility. It could be going to meet the Joyces and go to Joyce Farms and seeing what's going on their farm. It could be, messing around the back of the house, working on specials. It could be tasting and trying things out or interacting with guests. Like that's really fun and different for so many people. And I know we've gotten to the point sometimes where like we sort of put the blinders on and we forget that what we're doing is like unique and fun and people would be curious about it. And we're just like, oh, it's just another day. It's another Tuesday. So it's trying to just like build that muscle and that muscle memory to say, when in doubt, let's capture it. Let's just put it out there and try to spread the word because it's a fun way to build a brand.
Well, and I've said before, we're more similar than we are different individually. I don't care what industry you are in, right? And we're all human beings, and I think your story can inspire someone to, maybe you're an accountant and you've always wanted to have a bakery, right? But you're watching someone's journey that can push you to say, hey, I can do that same thing, right? Like I'm going to take the leap of faith and do that. And again, it's your own individual TV channel, right? And like now as a society, to your point, at nighttime, we're programmed for these like 15-second clips of just like interested, not interested, interested, not interested, maybe not interested in the moment, right? But how much you're giving to it. Every day there's 150 million posts per day on Facebook. There's 100 million on Instagram, 37 million on TikTok. There's 3.5 million uploads on YouTube. That minute count can vary. You've got YouTube Shorts. And then shockingly, there's 2 million posts per day on LinkedIn, right? So huge opportunity to promote yourself and your services through LinkedIn. Totally different based off of what you're trying to accomplish. But all that to say, the attention is shifted from watching TGIF for me as a kid on Friday night at 6 p.m. Like you watch on demand whatever show you want to watch. You fast forward through commercial. You consume content when it's convenient to you. And I think we have to remember that as a brand or as a distributor is how am I able to reach a chef? Because as you start to go and get in distribution and knock on the door and do a ride along, you're going to find that the distributor rep really worked hard to get 7 appointments, right? You jump in the car with them. 2 of the people didn't show up. Another one 40-minute wait to get in front of that individual. The other one got tied up in a meeting, but you got to get in front of the sous chef that may or may not have influence and may or may not remember what you had to say to pass it along. So how can you capture that attention? And I do think, what is the future of buying and selling in a kitchen? Anyone in food knows that distribution companies used to do calendars, right, or clipboards. Well, what if you had, the cost of a TV screen, you can get a 23-inch touch screen now for $200. Like that investment of putting in Swizzler in back of house, a flat screen that goes on the wall that, is basically a rolling billboard, touch screen, order entry, FaceTime the customer service to say y'all fucking suck, or whatever the case is, a video of why you guys are different. Bringing product to life is going to be very real, and you're going to see marketing teams in distribution become more production companies. They're going to have videographer, photographer, podcast studio, copywriter. There's going to be more emphasis because you have to capture that attention.
I think it's just such a good tiebreaker, excuse me, where it's like the relationship or the story. If any, again, going back to like, we're all people. If it's a chef or a restaurant owner or whatever, like, of course, there's dollars and cents, there's nickels and dimes, and we're in a game of pennies. So like sometimes cost is going to be the question mark that you need to like work around, or it's going to be the decision factor. For a lot of things, it's just like, does this feel like the right thing for me to do as a human? Or do I like working with this person? Do I want to support them? Because I've got to buy 30 cases of fries a week anyway. Do I want my dollar to go to Lamb Weston or I want it to go to Jessie and Ben's? And like the example of Joyce Farms, we've worked with them for probably 6 years. We really believe in regenerative agriculture. we know we're paying a premium for it. We believe it tastes better. We believe people will feel better after they eat it. Even if they don't really consciously know it's like a main big benefit thing and they're being like healthy or doing this, we feel like it's the right thing to do and it helps build this recurring business and builds up our brand. But we weren't getting credit for it for people and like being able to charge a premium. But when you go and you do the farm tour and you build a relationship, that's what like is the thing for us that kind of like put us over the edge. It was the tiebreaker of why we're going to do that. And I think to your point, like being a production company, really being thoughtful around making your brand entertaining, engaging, educational, feel like there's a real human, feel like you have a relationship there, and putting that extra like razzle dazzle on the production quality so it's frictionless. The hook in the first half second catches you, makes you want to keep watching. All that stuff is going to become so important. And I totally agree. I think if distributors can also work that in and find ways to like pull the storytelling from the awesome specialty brands they're working with and put it front and center in front of their restaurants, it's going to be a big win-win across the board because it's stickier. Like if, you know, there's a certain specialty distributor that's only using or only carrying us in Denver, you know, if any brand wants to work with us, like they've got to buy through the distributor and it makes them different and unique. So I definitely agree that, you know, specialty brands, it's a huge unlock and almost like necessary to be alive. But I think for distributors and for salespeople, individual sales reps, all this stuff, there's just so much opportunity to build. I've heard this concept of a binge bank. Have you heard of this?
No.
I think it's really good. It's a great like branding thing. I think it's for especially people like, you know, influencer type content or just brands thinking about this idea of like you have 15-second clips, 10-second clips. You're trying to make this stuff that goes viral. At the end of the day, like even if a post doesn't get the 10,000 views you want it to and like it's a couple hundred, is it doing a good job telling your story? Where when that one customer 2 months from now finds you and says, "Oh wow, Ian Culinary Connections, this guy seems cool. Let me see what he's all about." And I go to your profile and I do the 15-second flip, 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 and I watch 20 in a row and I binge it. Do I get the full story? Do I get like, oh shit, this guy's awesome. I love this person's content. I love what they're all about. And I love that example you brought up. Like you're going out, you're doing your sales meetings, you're calling on 5 accounts, one guy's delayed, you meet the sous chef, all that stuff. And like, there's that like shaking hand to hand, you know, man to man, man to woman, whatever it is, the eye contact, making a real relationship. Of course, that's going to be a hack. It's going to be great. But how do you scale that intimacy in a way where like somebody can get the lead and hear about you and they go look at Jessie and Ben's Instagram or Jesse's personal one and they flip through it and they see, you know, like to your point, I'm in Denver, I'm at a restaurant, I'm so happy because our fries are on the menu, this awesome restaurant, I'm eating this meal there. And they flip to the next one and we're at a potato farm, we're talking about where our stuff comes from. And you flip to the next one and we're at our fry factory. Like that's going to make us stand out. It makes them want to work with us. So I think it's like a lot of work to put together that production grade content and get that out there, make it a priority. But I would just love to see so many more brands do that because I think it's more fun. It's more fun for them building the content and making it more engaging for their own team. And I think it's just going to be the direction of where things are going, where people want to work with people. People want to be excited about the brands that are on there. They want to be excited about the stories and tell those stories. And the easier we make it to like fit into that 15-second window, but also not expect like every piece of content needs to go viral. Sometimes like just being like, I need to just bank this and be like, this is a good representation of what we care about. And the right people will find it. And we have that happen on our own social media platforms. Every once in a while, you'll get a notification. You've got like 13 new likes and you look at it. It's like the same person just went through like 13 things in a row and liked all of them in a row. It's like, I don't know who this person is, but like clearly, unless they're a bot, they like what we're about. Right. So it's cool to be able to build that and like be thoughtful around what type of content you're putting out there. And if there's some through line of consistency of your brand, that if someone flips through your last 10 posts, are they kind of getting a consistent idea of like what you're all about, what you care about, and understanding what the brand story is?
Yeah, I think people should get away from, you know, caring about likes and view count and just get in the habit of producing content to create relevancy. And through practicing, you'll figure out what may work, what may not work. But also, you know, even if you got 204 views on a particular thing, all it takes is one particular buyer to transform, you know, whatever it is in your business. And we're not in the era of one piece of content per week. Like if you have that mindset, you need to like reshape that. Really, you need to be pumping out an enormous amount of content in order to reach when the person is consuming that content. Last week I said in the podcast with Stephanie was, the average American touches, swipes, or taps their phone over 2,000 times per day. Like, people get anxiety not having their phone. At a red light, they're checking it. At the kids' school program, they're checking it, right? Like, if you don't think that's real, guess what? Your mom is on it and she's DMing you like, haha, look at this video. That every generation is practicing this tool. And, it is, there's good and bad that comes with it 100%. No doubt about it. But you do have a unique opportunity to storytelling, connect genuinely with people to help build yourself up, get inspired, and make change. As we wrap up, this has been a fantastic conversation that, took me on a path that I didn't think was good. I thought it was going to be more all about French fry. But in that, I think while you've been building your brand, you've gotten to know potatoes more intimately than most people probably will. What are some interesting statistics that have been striking to you about the potato consumption production?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a very interesting thing to be pulling back the layers on, learning more about. A few kind of interesting stats. One is that just understanding how big and consolidated the industry is kind of mind blowing. What we've learned is that all of the kind of like medium size, as you probably know, like a lot of these manufacturers or brands, when they're making a product, they're not actually making it themselves. We self-manufacture, we're actually making our fries. But most of the time you go to a grocery store or you go to, a brand that's in wholesale and food service, they're not actually making their product. They've come up with a recipe, they've formulated it, they've scaled it up, and they have a co-manufacturer making it. In the potato French fry world, there's not really any co-manufacturers left. There's a very few that are out there doing specialty potato or like a medium-ish scale. Almost all of these medium-sized manufacturers have gotten rolled up by the 2 or 3 giant companies, McCain, Lamb Weston, Simplot. They basically bought up the entire manufacturing of potatoes in the country. And also like their big plans they're doing when they're opening up a new one, it's a multi-$100 million facility. It's running with like crazy technology, like 24 hours a day. And they're running through like 25,000 pounds of potatoes per hour per line. And there's multiple lines running at the same time. So just like the scale and the amount of potatoes, like when I think all of us thinking about it, it's not that surprising when you go down the highway and you see 10 fast food restaurants and you realize that, 80% of their orders are probably going with French fries. There's a lot of potatoes, but the scale of the industry is huge. And it's just really interesting. When we go back to this idea of incentives, like there's not a lot of incentive in an industry that's super consolidated to innovate. And it's not easy to enter as a new company because you can't go find a co-manufacturer and like develop this new recipe. You've got to build this business brick by brick and go out and compete with some of the best to ever do it, who've built these brands over 50, 70 years, who built their brand on the back of McDonald's scaling to a giant, global and, national company. So for, I think, some people that just seems so daunting that they would never go in and compete against it. For us, we actually feel like that's the opportunity. It's like, it's a pretty tough moat to get through, but if we can figure it out, it means that, not a lot of other people are going to come and compete with us as a new entrant. And we feel like for the big guys, we're really not relevant to them. Like maybe we're like stealing a couple customers here and there in a region or something, but like until we've built a 30, 50, $100 million business, we're sort of like a little gnat that they just kind of like wave out of their way. So for us, we feel like we just need to stay focus on quality, which is how a lot of these brands came into be. They focused on quality, and over the years, it's sort of like focus more on efficiency and optimization. If we can focus on quality, we can focus on brand, and we can just focus on putting out like solving problems for our customers and maintaining control of the production, we feel like there's a huge opportunity there. So yeah, I think that's a huge thing. I think the other piece of it is like learning a lot about these oils has been really interesting. Seed oils, like anyone who's on Twitter and Instagram and stuff, they might see some of the stuff about it, but there's just so much more research and stuff coming out that you learn more about, what is powering a lot of the like junk food in our country. And one of the stats I think I heard was like 20%, I think it is, of like calories for every person in the country comes from vegetable oil, which is kind of a crazy thing because no one's like thinking about cooking with vegetable oil or like putting it in their food, but it's like in every processed food. And that's kind of what makes junk food junk food. What we've learned a lot about is just like these kind of hidden calories and these other things that are going on, the inflammation it causes, this correlation with diseases, all these things. And then learning about, well, like how did we get here? And that's what fascinates us with the food industry in general. It's just like the supply chains and all the incentives and how things have been set up. And when you keep following it back all the way, like McDonald's and a lot of these fast food companies completely changed how our food system was set up. And as they scaled to be in like 4,000 restaurants serving millions and millions of hamburgers and fries, they had the buying power to basically like dictate how everything was set up around it. And what we learned is like they were using beef tallow for 30, 40 years. And that was just the way people fried back then, and lard. And, people, when they raised cattle, there weren't these like CAFOs, like concentrated feedlots. It was, farms where you'd go and get beef from. But all this consolidation has just created this sort of like Frankenstein industry, where we as consumers don't really see like the mystery meat. We don't see the things that are going on behind the scenes. We just sort of like accept something as it tastes good. And I think what we've learned a lot about is like these giant companies, the R&D for them, they're really good at making things taste good, especially using bad ingredients. But I think we've just got to realize that people can now hack our taste buds. They understand how to give us something that can like quote unquote taste good, especially when you put in the sugar and all the other stuff that's in there, all the flavor enhancers. What I think we want to do is like go back to basics a little bit and say, how do you make things taste really good by taking things away, not adding things to it, by focusing on the quality of the ingredients. For using a really high quality russet potato, fried in a really high quality oil, using the right amount of time, using the right amount of salt, packaging it up the right way, being careful throughout the process. And I think just like going back to these like ways things were done for centuries, like the Belgian style twice fried fry is like the kind of standard for French fries all over the world. And it's where French fries started. It's where some of the best kitchens in the world are doing it right now, even today. And that hasn't become the mainstream, huge tonnage way of doing it in like mainstream big potato America. But we feel like there's an opportunity to just like go back to basics, focus on quality, focus on the ingredients, focus on the technique. And, with that, we can give customers the best experience possible. And you don't have to be taking on extra complexity in your restaurant to achieve a really delicious, high quality fry you're proud of. That's been kind of like where we've been landing on. It's just like peeling back the curtains and be like, oh, now we understand why this is broken. But it actually, instead of being this thing where it's sort of like demotivating because it's just such a big problem, we get excited. We see that, go, wow, this is a big opportunity. And now we just need to go out and continue to stay focused and just do a good job and keep focusing on solving problems and putting out a great product.
Amazing. Well, I've enjoyed the conversation. Hope we didn't fry anyone's brain. See what I did there?
That's good.
In our conversation, I thought it was insightful and different, and very on topic in the state of where we are, regardless of chef, brand, distributor, in the way to go to market and brand yourself to create attention to potentially get a PO to come your way. If you want to find Jessie, where do we find you?
I try to be very easy to find online. So yeah, here on LinkedIn, shoot me a note. I imagine it's getting posted there. Jessie_Koenig on all the social media stuff is me. And you could also reach me. I'm running a lot of our social handles at Jessie and Ben's on Instagram or Twitter at Swizzler Foods. If you're ever in DC, come say hello. My email address is jesse@jessieandbens.com, which you may have guessed anyway. But you shoot me an email. I would love to talk to anybody, even if it's just brainstorming. If you're interested in a sample, obviously, would love to get you a sample of our fries. You want to go get a burger at Swizzler, hit me up. Ian, I hope we're your first stop next time you're in DC, of course. And yeah, we're excited. Just meet more folks in the industry. We love, being a part of the food scene, and there's just so much to learn from each other. So anybody, even if it's not business related, just want to say hi and chat and brainstorm, always about it. And I really appreciate the time for anyone who spent their hour listening to us.
Jessie, it's been awesome. Thank you for joining another episode of Culinary Connections Distribution Dialogues, where we dish it out.